The longsword truly is the most iconic medieval sword in the world, and it has become the symbol for chivalry, justice, knighthood, valour, and nobility. And men were allowed to carry this sword not only for self-defence, but to proclaim to the world that they held the ideals that this sword represented dear to their hearts. But not anymore. But never fear, because there is a way that one can bear the long sword as in times of old. Not exactly in times of old, but good enough and you wouldn't be breaking the law. Presenting the longsword shirt with royal coat of arms style mantling, the longsword sits front and centre in the majesty that it rightly deserves. As always, available through Teespring, link in the description.
Shadowverse.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and I'm a huge medievalist, which, shorthand for medieval enthusiast. And the things that attract me to this period, primarily, are swords, castles, and knights. In fact, I've built most of my YouTube channel around that. And I branch off, but yeah, sword, castle, knights, main thing. But I like to go further. Because I like these things, I want to know how they're made, how they were used, how do they fit into the culture and the everyday lives of the people of this period. And in doing so, I've come across an interesting thing, and that is the confusion about when the medieval period really happened. Officially, and I say officially loosely, because the official concept came about in an unofficial means. Well, not unofficial, it came about through a huge misconception, which is why I feel the official dates that are ascribed to the medieval period are actually incorrect. Now, some people get really bent out of shape when I challenge standard, established whatever. People much smarter than me have said this is that and that is that, and they don't like when I say, but that doesn't make sense. Sorry if you do, but I'm not the only one who actually says this. In terms of disagreeing with the standard dates of the medieval period, I'm not the only one who actually does this. It's funny, I came to this conclusion separately from my own observation and study, and I saw these dates don't really fit properly. And after I actually formed this opinion, I decided to make this video, in fact, when was the real medieval period. But I thought, I don't have any qualifications, I'm just an enthusiast. I have no authority to make these statements, which is why some people, complain. But I think this next part kind of validates me a bit, because I decided, right, I won't make the video because I'm, blowing against the wind, perhaps. But in my further study, I found that a lot of other historical academics agreed with me. And so I think that validates me a bit in my own casual observations. So officially, and I'm always doing this, I don't like it, right? Officially, the medieval period happened from the year 500 to the year 1500, 6th century to the 16th century. And like I said, I've disagreed with that enough, right, for a length of time, that it actually slipped into one of my videos without me actually realizing it. And it's the video, did knights exist before the medieval period? Which is kind of key to that discussion. When was the medieval period, to figure out when knights, existed before then. And I said the medieval period started in the year 1000, not the year 500. And that slipped in because this is the thing, because when you look at the year 500 to the year 1000, not myself, I'm not the only example, for one, historians agree here, is that there is a big difference in the split between the middle. From the years 500 to the years 1000, there is a huge difference in the types of things that were around, the cultures and stuff, compared from the year 1000 to the year 1500. And all the things that we ascribe to the medieval period, swords, castles, knights, technically started to gain proper prominence and really even just, became, right, in the year 500, the year 1000 to the year 1500. Castles weren't really a thing before the year 1000. I mean, motte and bailies, and there was some, examples of that amongst the Normans in the France area. But if you go much further before then, you wouldn't be calling them castles anymore. Same with knights. Knights certainly didn't exist in the concept that we consider knights, and that's what my whole video about, well, did knights exist before the medieval period? They were horsemen, and the idea knight wasn't even, they weren't called knights like that in there. But anyway, that's really what a knight was back then, not the classic medieval knight that we think of. So do you see my problem with it? Like, there's this big distinction and difference between the years 500 to 1000 and the years 1000 to 1500. So why was the medieval period set in that time frame? Because it's actually based upon an incorrect thing, okay? Misinformation. The reason why they decided this whole period should go together, 500 to 1500, that's all one thing. Like I said, huge incorrect misconception that's based on. What's this misconception, this idea? Well, what was the term that was more commonly less referred to now? The Dark Ages, okay? That's where these dates come from, is that people assumed from the time the fall of Rome to the Renaissance, everything was in a period of, when I say darkness, I mean intellectual darkness, okay? Education was bad, people didn't wash themselves, hygiene was terrible, and peasants lived off digging dirt. The Dark Ages were anything but intellectually dark. The technology and advancement and philosophy that existed then was huge. Education existed fully, and in fact education was available to anyone of any social status. Well, yes, peasants could learn how to read and write if they wanted, in a different way than you might think. There weren't state-run schools, but there were monastic orders, okay? The places of learning and education was actually through these monasteries. Now you might think, like that, what, the church was running it all? You probably don't understand how independent these monastic orders really were from the church. Yes, they needed approval from the church to form and stuff like that, but in terms of conducting their day-to-day lives, you know, what things were done, what they would do, the businesses they would establish, and who they taught, and also what they studied, that was very much determined by themselves. And on top of that, it is such a myth to think that education only existed in the monastic orders and stuff like that. Think about the architects. Just one brief example, let alone all the other tradesmen and crafts that exist in the medieval period. Think of the education that you need to have to perform some of these jobs. So an architect, right? Even a stonemason or something like that. But an architect needs to know engineering and mathematics and the things that were, you know, the things they built. I love castles so much. Look at the size and the grandeur of these castles. The mathematical engineering, the precision that goes into building these things, that all comes from a very educated mind. So the idea that the Dark Ages were intellectually dark is an absolute load of bull. But that idea, that concept, is what gives us the current dates of the medieval period, because that's what they ascribed the darkness, the intellectual, you know, dearth that existed back then. That's when they thought it was, year 500 to the year 1500. So anyone who thinks we needs to hold on to these dates that, you know, define the medieval period, because we changed the word because we know it's not dark anymore, so I'll call it the medieval period, but then kept the dates. Anyone thinks that we need to keep the dates, now know that is based on incorrect idea, an incorrect classification of that whole period, let alone. So then, if we were to look at this time period, this you know, span of 1,000 years, and try and define it according to what really were they like, okay? So that's what I mean, you know, what defined these periods to make them distinct so we can give a proper classification so we know what we're talking about when referring to. And when you do that, not only myself, you notice there's a big difference in this period, first half, second half. To the point, these are different periods of history completely. Don't lump them together. A much better classification is to look at the years 500 to 1000 as the Carolingian period, the Frankish period, but this time is very distinct, okay? And you will not see knights, castles, and a huge amount of swords in that period. But, oh geez, there are so many differences. And it's funny, like if you compare the similarities between the year 500 to 600, 600 to 700, that there's a lot of similarities there, which is why they go together so well. And then on the flip side of this, same with the years, you know, 1000 to 1100, 1100, 12, so many similarities. And though things, you know, evolved and advanced, it's when you get to a significant point of difference between the periods that came before, where you say, all right, it's time to call this time something different. And in my opinion, the years 1000 to 1500 is the true medieval period, okay? Some people, even historians, like to go even further and make a division within this period, 500, 1000 to 1500. And the division is the first half or first 2/3 they call the feudal period or feudal age, and then the last one they will call the Middle Ages or medieval period. Personally, I think it works really well just to put them all together because there's not too much of a distinction, is what I mean, within that 500-year period. Now, I'm not sure if I can change the standard official definitions of the times of the medieval period, but I will tell you right now that the current dates, the official dates of when the medieval period happened, is based off an incorrect idea. That this whole time, 500 to 1500, was defined together because it was a dark age. So go on using those dates if you want, but that's what you're perpetuating almost. And you're also saying that that whole period had a strong similarity that, puts it all together, and that's dumb. You don't define something by a negative, meaning this is just the period between the fall of Rome and the start of the Renaissance. No, define a period by the distinct elements of the culture and time. And to do that, like I said, you have the Carolingian age, Frankish and Viking age. Well, you pick in the comments below. What do you think year 500 to 1000 should be called? And then 500 to 1500, the medieval period. Thank you for watching. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. It's good to get it off my chest. I hope to see you again. And until that time, farewell.